ever considered the possibility that you are arrested in your own home, in front of your family and full view of your friends and neighbours, held in a police cell, interviewed under caution, charged when you haven't done anything? Have you ever considered the possibility that your photograph, name and address might appear in the local national press and on TV, insinuating what an evil monster you are when you haven't done anything? Have you ever considered the possibility you might be subjected to additional investigation by the social services and other agencies where you may have no right of representation when you haven't done anything? Have you ever considered the possibility that social services could force you to break off contact with your family and children when you haven't done anything? Have you ever considered the possibility that without proof, evidence, witnesses, or corroboration, you could be convicted and sentenced to several years in prison when you haven't done anything?
A true story illustrating the wrongful conviction of two innocent men. This is part one of a two-part film.
Anthony Searles was arrested the night of October 15, 2012 at the residence in East Bakersfield he shared with his co-defendant Randy Miller. Both Randy Miller and Searles were home when Searles was arrested. Randy Miller was not arrested at this time. The one thing that police need to make an arrest is a perpetrator identification. This typically ends up being a witness identification by a witness or victim. If a perpetrator has not been identified, no lawful arrest can be made. On the left is Searles' photo lineup, on the right is Miller's lineup. Both are alleged to be signed by Sierra Williams. When you compare the two signatures, clearly you can see they do not match. For example, the C in Sierra, the top C comes to a point and the bottom C curves. The first A in Sierra, the top A is wide and open and the bottom A is closed. The R in Sierra, the top R is wide and open and the bottom R is closed. The second A in Sierra, the top loops around the name while the bottom curves away from the name. The W in Williams, the top W is wide and rests on top of the line while the bottom W is closer together and dips under the line. The first I in Williams, the top pulls straight up into the I while the bottom curves into the I. The L's in Williams, the top L's are straight lines while the bottom L's are loops. The A in Williams, the top A is a point while the bottom loops. The M in Williams, the top M is high and prominent with high distinctive arches while the bottom M is small and has low arches while the middle point does not reach the line. The S in Williams, the top S is wide and distinctive with the breakaway curving up slightly with the bottom S barely legible with the breakaway a straight line, no curve. When you look at the dots of the I's, the top are dashes while the bottom are dots. Anyone can see that these two signatures do not match. California law requires the following for suspect identification. Shall adopt regulations for conducting photo lineup with eyewitnesses. Prior to conducting the identification procedure and as close in time to the incident as possible, the eyewitness shall provide the description of the perpetrator of the offense. In Dorkin's interview with Catherine Miller, he shows her a photo lineup without ever asking her to describe the suspect first. He shows her the photo lineup and Searles is in number 2. Catherine is asked to pick out the suspect, which is part of the admonition. Catherine told Dorkin he's not in here. Because Catherine did not identify Searles as the suspect, the transcripts of Dorkin's interview with Catherine do not show her response. Dorkin claims his batteries died and that's why it doesn't show what she said. However, the audio tape provided to defense, you do hear her say he's not in here. Something Searles pointed out to ADA Domino. Dorkin also illustrates in his revised police report she couldn't identify Searles. In Dorkin's third interview with Catherine, he asked her to describe what this man looks like in regards to the man she allegedly gave oral sex to, which proves he knows he is required to ask the witness to give a description of the suspect, yet Dorkin never asked Catherine Miller to describe Searles. Catherine also described the man she allegedly gave a blowjob to as having short shave-like hair, green eyes, and being a white male. Her description is important because between May 2011 and July 2011, Randy Miller had medium-length hair. His eyes are blue, not green. The description she gave fits his after-arrest photograph, where his hair is short and his eyes can easily be mistaken as green in this poor-lit photo, which was taken over a year after Searles' arrest. Dorkin claims the reason why Catherine couldn't identify Searles was because he showed her a photo lineup with another man named Anthony Searles in the number 2 slot. Defense requested a copy of this alleged photo lineup, and Dorkin claimed he was no longer in possession of it and had destroyed it because it was inaccurate. Dorkin provided the defense with an individual photo of the man he claimed was named Anthony Searles, which was the man in the number 6 slot of Searles' lineup. What Dorkin did not anticipate was Searles actually knowing who that man was. His name is David Turner, and Searles has known him for decades prior to Searles' arrest. Searles was friends with David's cousin Rachel for years. We know Catherine was shown Searles' photo lineup. For one, it is dated the same day he alleges to have interviewed her. 2, Dorkin lied about who David Turner was by claiming his name was Anthony Searles. 3, Dorkin never attempted to put another photo lineup in front of Catherine Miller again. He had 2 years before trial to and never did. That is because she couldn't ID Searles as a perpetrator the first time around, so why try a second? An identification procedure shall be composed to that the fillers generally fit the eyewitness description of the perpetrator. In the case of a photo lineup, the photo of the person suspected of being the perpetrator should, if practicable, resemble their appearance at the time of the offense and not unduly stand out. Research studies find that when an innocent man is put into a photo lineup and his appearance does not match that of the others in the photo lineup, he is picked by the eyewitness more often than not. The law requires that all fillers, that is, people who are not the suspect and are put into the photo lineup, share the same appearance as the suspect. When reviewing Searles' photo lineup, he is wearing a red shirt and placed in between 2 people wearing white shirts. He is the only person wearing red. Searles has facial hair and medium brown hair. Both men on his left and right are bald and have no facial hair. The 3 men on the bottom are all wearing black shirts. None of the men share the same appearance as Searles. They even changed the hue of his skin tone to brighten his face and make him unduly stand out. This photo lineup array is not only designed to have Searles stand out, but draw the attention of the viewer directly to Searles. The law says an officer shall not validate or invalidate an eyewitness's identification. Dorkin violated the law when he validated Sierra's pick in the lineup, something the law says he cannot do. Sierra Williams also states, "So I did good," looking for the officer's approval, which further supports the argument she was coached by Detective Dorkin. Catherine Miller was never shown a photo lineup of Randy Miller. It is very possible one of these photo lineups was signed by Sierra Williams, yet it is not possible that both were. Further supported by the fact during Searles' trial, Sierra was shown Randy Miller's booking photo and asked if she recognized the man in the photo, and she said, "No, I don't know who that is." These photo lineups were the legal authority for Dorkin to arrest both defendants. At the time of Searles' arrest, he requested a copy of the arrest warrant. He was never provided one. During the course of his case, he continuously requested a copy of an arrest warrant and was never provided one. Searles even went pro se representation and was still not provided a copy of an arrest warrant. It was not until his case was dismissed, then refiled, did the prosecution provide a copy of a new arrest warrant for the new case. To this date, Searles has not been given an arrest warrant for his original case filing. Some may think cops not serving arrest warrants couldn't happen, or is extremely rare. However, in Kern County, it is expected to be arrested without an arrest warrant being served or issued.
A complaint was made about the way the Kern County Sheriff's Office handles arrest warrants, and that prompted the Kern County Grand Jury to investigate. Visits were made to KCSOS substations to see if proper procedures were being followed. It found that some warrants were not processed in a timely manner. A lack of staffing and proper training resulted in some warrants going weeks or months without being served. In some cases, no one was making sure warrants were being served.
Searles went to trial facing 15 criminal charges in this case. Every charge in relation to a crime the police say Searles personally committed himself was dismissed. The only 3 charges he was convicted of were the charges in relation to the allegations of co-defendant allegedly receiving oral sex from Catherine Miller and Sierra Williams. The alleged videotape charges were dismissed, the alleged assault with a firearm charge was dismissed, and the alleged drug charges were dismissed. So to put it plainly, he was convicted for his co-defendant allegedly getting a blowjob from 2 minors. All charges that were dismissed were on the grounds of lack of evidence to support said charges. In the state of California, law enforcement has 10 days from the day a search warrant is executed to return it to the courts. The Kern County Sheriff's Office did not return a search warrant in the allotted time. Searles filed a motion to return seized property in August. The courts and the district attorney's office had no record of a search warrant being issued. The public information kiosk at the felony department in the courthouse has no record of a search warrant being returned in the allotted time, leaving two options. One, Dorkin intentionally ignored the law and refused to return the search warrant to the courts as required by law, or two, no warrant existed. It was not until January, 13 months after Searles' arrest, does a warrant get returned to the courts, and it was only after the threat of the case getting dismissed due to illegal search and seizure does Dorkin turn one in. We believe Dorkin forged a search warrant to turn in order to maintain Searles' criminal conviction. The Kern County Sheriff's Office claimed to have arrived at the residence in question to conduct their search at 7:27. Yet when Searles was in the Lerdo Law Library reviewing his case file pro se, he had the law librarian check the properties on the search warrant photos to establish a timeline. She printed out a screenshot showing the time of the first photo taken to be at 7:14 a.m. Searles provided the printout to ADA Domino and asked, how can a photo be taken by KCSO before they even arrive? The next time Searles was permitted into the law library, the law librarian informed him one of his discs had been missing and that a new disc had been delivered. When he reviewed his case file, the search warrant photo disc was gone and replaced with a new disc. The new disc had this photo Searles had printed out showing a new timestamp for the photo as 8:14 a.m. as time taken. Yet when you look at the bottom left corner, you see the timestamp for the photo as 7:14 a.m. This is ghost data. When you delete data and fail to delete all the data, you risk having some of remaining and retrievable. That is what you have here. They attempted to delete the timestamp and replace it with a new one, but failed to delete all the data. Two timestamps for one photo proving criminal intent. Falsifying evidence to secure a wrongful conviction.
Well, when you think about it, the sheriff's department claimed to be there at 7:27 in the morning when they claimed that they arrived. But the problem with that is I was there at 7:58. I was actually there before then, but when the child transfer deputy showed up, he showed up at almost 8 o'clock, just right around 8 o'clock, and no other cops were there. I was there, my ex-wife was there, and the officer did the transfer, and then he allowed me to leave, and I left, and I went to the laundromat. But if there were...
It is important to note that Tony Barber, Searles' ex-wife, would not call to have a deputy present if deputies were already present conducting a search. It is also important to note that the search warrant event log has no note of a KTP taking place, and the KTP event log has no note of a search warrant execution taking place.
If there's a legit search warrant, then the officer who's doing the child transfer is required by law to detain me there until the searching officers arrive, so that they can not only search my person, but search the residence and serve me with a search warrant. I was never detained. I went off to the laundromat. When I went down to the laundromat, I was there for hours and then drove to the house to see what was going on. And when we got there, the front door was kicked in. Several officers were there. And the investigating officer, Detective Dorkin, came and approached me. And he asked me if I had a cell phone. I said, yes, I do. And he asked me for the cell phone. So I provided him my cell phone. And then I asked for a search warrant. He said, oh, well, it's in the house. I said, okay, well, I'd like to see the search warrant. He says, you have to wait till we leave. And while I was sitting there waiting for them, they were doing, two officers came walking out carrying these huge old big brown bags. And then they started scurrying across the driveway. They were running straight to the driveway to the vehicle that they had there, and DVDs were falling out of the top of the bag. And I was like, taking all my DVDs and and they didn't say to me. The Detective Dorkin, the one I was speaking with, spoke to Detective Connor when he came out and says, hey, are we done? He says, yeah, we're done. And he says, okay, and they hopped in the vehicle and they left. So I went inside the residence to see what was going on. They thrashed the entire house. All my DVDs were taken, all my video games were taken. I went looking through the house to see what was all missing. I went and checked my my closet, because that's where my safe and everything was. My DVR system was taken. My safe was opened, and all my property and contents of the safe was. I had baseball cards in there. I had comic books in there. I had money in there. All my personal birth certificate, social security card, all that stuff was in there for me and my daughter, as well as her medical record. and all that shit was taken. I had hard drives in there and everything, and all the contents of the safe was taken out and stolen. So I went looking around the house, and I found a couple pages of a receipt, a search warrant receipt, but there was no search warrant attached. It was just pages saying what they took, and the majority of the stuff that they had listed on the receipt was not didn't include stuff that it didn't include the DVDs they took. It didn't include the contents of the safe. And then finally, when I finally got a copy of the police report after my arrest, there was no mention of the safe. There's no mention of the DVR system, no mention of any contents of the closet whatsoever. And that's where they claim to have found evidence, but they don't list any of the contents in the closet. And then I get the copies of the search warrant photos. When I go through the search warrant photos, there's no picture of the closet. They didn't take a photo of the closet. They didn't provide that to the defense. They didn't provide it to the district attorney's office. Nothing. So nobody got a copy of that. Of what was, there's no proof of what was inside the closet for my trial. And then when you go through the search warrant photos, you can see they initially parked into the driveway, and then once they breached the house, which wasn't even necessary because the living room window was open, so there's no need to breach the door. If the window's open, we can just crawl through. But they kick in the door, they come inside, and they take a photo of the security camera monitor that was in the living room that was watching the driveway, and you could see that they moved the car from there and parked it in front of the neighbor's house. And then they move the car a second time. Once they realize that it's still in view, they remove it a second time and park it in front of the residence in question. And then they turned the camera that was mounted on the porch watching the front gate. They turned it to face the pillar it was mounted on so that it wasn't recording or seeing anything that was going on. And then they cut open the front gate lock and moved back and forth through the front gate, unseen by any of the cameras. And if you're not doing anything illegal, there's no reason whatsoever to be hiding or trying to conceal your movements. If you have a legal right to be there, you don't need to be concealing your movements. So that just shows you right there that they had criminal intent when they came to the residence. The sheriff's department claimed to have found specific items that were of evidentiary value at the residence: camcorder, a silver Sanyo Miro phone, and night vision goggles. My Modern Warfare night vision goggles. The funny thing about this is in 2011, October 2011, I reported a burglary at the house because Christopher Marino robbed my house with Harry Duckworth and a few other people, and they stole the night vision goggles, the camcorder, all that shit. And I filed a email report to the sheriff's department. The sheriff's department came out when I called them that day of the burglary. They came out and they said that they were going to take my report, but they didn't have time to list everything that was taken because, other crimes are occurring that are more important than a burglary, especially when the suspect's no longer on scene. So they took they gave me an email address to email them, and I emailed their email address and gave them a full list of what was taken during the burglary that I could recall, or that I had noticed that was missing. And the night vision goggles were taken, the camcorder was taken, the phone was taken, and all these items were listed on the email report to the sheriff's department. And now all of a sudden, the sheriff's claiming that these items were found in the residence during their search. The email report, the sheriff's station, saying that when you make a report, they don't save emails to the report. They said they memorialize everything that's stated and then put that into the report, and they delete the emails. But I've already got proof of that's false, because the report I filed against Harry Duckworth, they saved the email, they attached it to the report and everything. So they're just lying to cover up the fact that I have evidence that those items were not in the house during the search, and that they were in fact planted by the sheriff's department.
Christopher Marino was interviewed by the district attorney's office private investigator Stevenson. During the course of this interview, Christopher Marino admitted to stealing these items. He stated they stole the video player and night vision goggles, the very items KCSO claims they found during their search. Yet again, we ask, how can items stolen November 2011 be found at the residence July 13, 2012 unless they were planted there? The sheriff's office continues to move their vehicle so it would not be recorded by cameras. They cut open the front gate lock to ensure access to the house out of camera view. The only plausible reason would be to ensure they were not recorded planting evidence in the home.
And then when you look at the mirror that they're claiming that they found during the search, you could see that there's a whole of names written all over it. Is in February 2012, I was taking photos of my weight loss. And one of the photos I have, it just happens to contain this mirror in it. And this mirror, you do not see any of these names written on it. And I have the timestamp. The photos on an SD card. The timestamp for it is February 2012. So the prosecution and the cops are arguing that these names were written May 2011 to July 2011. And they had several people testify that these names were written on this mirror during that time frame. But this photo proves that to be false. So not only do these people lie on the stand against me, it also proves that the names did not contain on the mirror during the time frame they're alleging.
The Kern County Sheriff's Office provided the defense with these two pictures. The first shown is alleged to be the before photo. The second shown is alleged to be the after. In the first photo, you will see photos on the Audrey Hepburn picture. KCSO claims images of underage girls were found on it. How do we prove they were planted by KCSO? If you look at the box in the photo, you will see it is open as if someone searched it, which is what would happen after cops searched the residence. You will also see a zebra blanket on the bed to the right. Then in the second photo, you will see the bed frame to the right against the wall. Then when you look at the box, it is partially closed with the zebra blanket clearly visible in it. So for this photo to be the after photo, KCSO would have to have packed the box and neatly folded the blanket and put it into the box. Do you honestly believe after thrashing the entire house they would pack the box and fold the blanket? What the blanket in the box proves is that was the before picture taken, and none of the three photos were on the Audrey Hepburn picture, and the cops pulled everything out of the box searching it, and the other photo is the after picturing. Because again, if these photos were not planted, they would have been introduced at trial as evidence, and they were not. In our investigation, we searched up these photos via Google Lens, and sure enough, we located the photo of the girl in the blue underwear. We located two sources of the image from outside California on an adult porn website, and the image is still there today. The post was on June 7, 2011, suggesting this image was uploaded from out of California and someone simply printed it out and put it in Searles' prior residence, supporting the fact it was planted. We also located this photo on over a dozen different sites after a reverse image search. Searles was in the process of moving, and this is proven in multiple ways. One May 14, 2012 event log, he instructed KCSO he was not living there, and two, the search warrant photos of Randy Miller's house shows Searles' property in Randy Miller's house. The same property from KCSO search of the residence in question. Searles said both the box frame and mattress were left leaning against the wall so that they would have room to navigate the dresser out of the bedroom when they got a moving truck. Since May 2012, he was slowly moving property out on his Vespa-style scooter to his new residence. To further prove these photos were planted, Searles has a photo he took of Randy Miller before the search was conducted by KCSO. You can see the Audrey Hepburn picture and no photos of these girls in it. Then all one has to do is look at the rationality of it all. Searles has had law enforcement harassing him again and again, searching his house again and again. If these photos were there before the search, one of these deputies would have made a report of it, and Dorkin's police report would illustrate that. Searles' ex-wife was allowed in by KCSO to conduct a court-ordered search of the residence to ensure it had water, electricity, and food for their child. Yet she makes no statement in trial to seeing any photos of presumed to be teen girls. Nor does she state that in their family law case. Lastly, KCSO is required by law to forward all evidence of suspected child pornography to the FBI, yet there is no record of this transfer occurring, nor any record of the FBI receiving notification of this alleged pornography. Nor was Searles charged with child pornography in regards to these photos KCSO claims they found. Again, these photos were never introduced at trial. The camcorder, night vision goggles, and Sanyo Miro cell phone were never introduced at trial. If any of this had evidentiary value, it would have been introduced at trial, and it was not. It was used to badmouth Searles to the media. Lastly, this photo is of Searles playing with his daughter in the backyard of the residence in which KCSO searched. You can see one shed behind the garage on the patio, yet there were two sheds there, one directly behind the garage out of view in this picture. KCSO did not provide photos of the backyard nor of these sheds or their content within. You must ask yourself why. If they had the legal right to be there, why are they not photographing everything as required by protocol? The reason is there was property of value within the sheds that KCSO stole, and they did not want proof of these items being there, which is exactly why KCSO did not provide a photo of the closet. Then we get to the alleged gun case KCSO took a long-distance photo of. They did not take the gun case as evidence, simply took a photo of it. They did not, however, photograph the serial number on the gun case. We believe that KCSO took one of their own gun cases out of their patrol car and planted it in the house to photograph to illustrate to the jury so-called evidence of a gun to use to back up the gun charge Searles was charged with. Yet, if it was evidence, it would have been seized. Gun cases, just like guns, come with a serial number that can be traced to the manufacturer and the owner. The reason why KCSO did not photograph the serial number is because it would link back to KCSO. It is also important to note that the gun charge was dismissed after Levi recanted his testimony.
Anyone with any sense would know if you have two people, two pedophiles, you know, they were best friends or whatever, hanging out and all that, they would be partying together, you know. And me and my co-defendant, they're accusing me and my co-defendant of being pedophiles. And if we're both pedophiles with the same interest in children, why was my co-defendant not partying with me at these parties? Everyone that was interviewed by the investigating detectives all said the same thing. They had no clue who my co-defendant was, and outside of Catherine Miller and Sierra Williams saying, "Well, they saw him this one time when they did that one thing." You know, it's and then the very next day, supposedly, we allegedly drove him to Planned Parenthood and to get, I guess, Sierra birth control, because apparently it makes sense that if you're performing oral sex on somebody that you would need birth control not to get pregnant. Who the would believe that? And how stupid would you have to be to get sucked into that, thinking that, oh, if somebody blows a load in your mouth, you're going to get pregnant? Really? Makes no sense at all. During the trial, Sarah Williams was shown my co-defendant's booking photo. It was Exhibit 27, and she was asked during the prosecution if she recognized the person in the photograph. And her response was, "No, I don't know who that is." Now, that the trial transcripts the defense was provided with doesn't show the "I don't know who that is" part. It just shows the "no." But she stated, "I don't know who that is," and I wrote that down in my notes, and the several people I had in court as observers all confirmed the same thing, that that's exactly what she said, but they took that portion out of the court transcripts. When you review the prelims for the first case, you'll see that my co-defendant was never mentioned in the first case. In the first case, I was charged with 5 felonies before they refiled it. When they refiled it, I was charged with 8 felonies, and then when I continuously refused to take a plea deal, they tacked it up to 16 charges. So, as a means of intimidation, but he was never mentioned in the first prelim. They never mentioned him. And then all of a sudden, they dropped the case against me, then refiled the same case under a different case number. Now he's all of a sudden mentioned and being charged as well. And the funny thing about that is if you review the photo lineups of me and my co-defendant, both of these are supposedly dated and signed prior to me being arrested. And yet my co-defendant wasn't arrested when I was arrested. The cops showed up at the residence. They arrested me. They spoke to him, and he was never arrested. So if he was identified as a suspect prior to me being arrested, like they're alleging, why was he not arrested? And then take it a step further past that. When I was arrested and he knew I was arrested, why did he not flee? If he was guilty of these crimes, he would have fled.
He assured us and agreed to provide for the surrender, and that's not occurred.
On June 17, 1994, O.J. Simpson became the most famous fugitive on the planet.
Everybody was on the alert looking for a wanted double homicide suspect who happened to be a Heisman Trophy winner.
West Fargo police are now saying that a burglary suspect rolled his car. He was driving away from officers. Officers were sent to the 1200 block of Queens Way for a vehicle burglary that was in progress. A caller told them that a man broke a window to get inside of a white SUV. Now, as police found him in the vehicle, he hit an officer's leg, then fled on Veterans Boulevard.
When you do a background check on Randy Miller Searles' co-defendant at the Kern Court's website at kern.courts.ca.gov, you will find he only has 2 criminal convictions. One is a driving-related offense, and the other is the conviction in relation to Searles' case. From that case number, you will see that Randy Miller's arrest was on July 25, 2013, approximately 9 months after Searles' arrest. Yet Detective Dorkin claims that Sierra Williams identified Randy Miller on October 9, 2012. 9 months is ample time to flee. In fact, 24 hours is ample time to flee if you're guilty of a sex crime. Randy was present during Searles' arrest and was not arrested, so why did he not flee? Because he is not guilty.
When I was in Laredo jail after my arrest, he continuously came and visited me there in Laredo jail. So while I was in there, they could have arrested him any time he came and visited me there, but they never made an arrest on him. Because when you show up there to visit somebody, they run your name. If you have any warrants or anything, you're arrested right on the spot. And like the full first year, I think, I was in county jail, he came and visited me. So why was he not arrested? If he was identified prior to me being arrested, why was he never arrested? Why was he not held in custody or sent in county jail and rotten in county jail? Then when you review the plea deal that was offered when I was originally arrested, the deal was that if I dismissed the charges against if I dismissed my criminal complaint against Detective Connor, then they wouldn't pursue criminal charges against my co-defendant, and they would allow me to plead out to any one charge that I wanted to plead out to, and even if it's a charge that didn't require me to register as sex offender, like contributing to the delinquency of a minor. You know, and I told them suck it. Every time they offered a plea deal, I told them suck it. I have no interest in taking a plea deal. Let's take it to trial. And Ms. Domino tried to push this whole thing that, oh well, you're gonna let your friend go to prison for a crime he didn't commit. I told him, you ain't got nothing on either one of us. What the do I have to be worried about? And she says, well, if you don't take this plea deal, he's going to prison. We'll make him go to prison. He'll spend the rest of his life in prison. Do you want that? Do you want your best friend to spend the rest of his life in prison when you can just take this deal and everything goes away? And it's like, you ain't got shit on me. Let's do this. I'll do this song and dance. Let's do this.
The Kern County Sheriff's Office requested a search warrant for Miller's home address based off of their claim they found text messages of a sexual nature from Miller to Searles-Harris. The courts granted this warrant based off of Detective Durkin's testimony. It is important to note, these alleged text messages were never brought up in trial nor presented to the jury. You will learn the true reason why here.
The text messages they claim to have found, which is dated 1/30/2012, the Sheriff's Department says Miller sent me, you know what I like about high school girls? I get older, they stay the same age. They claim that these text messages were of a perverse nature and proof of sexual interest and all this shared between both co-defendants, and they were only used solely as grounds for the search of Miller's residence. They were not presented at trial. I tried arguing with the courts that they should be presented at trial because I could prove that they were planted, because how could you send a text message from a phone, Samsung Galaxy S3, Miller's phone, which wasn't available to the public until 6/2012. Yet the text message was supposedly sent 1/30/2012, months before the phone was available. They never stated that they found these text messages in Miller's phone. They only claimed to found them in the Sanyo Mirror phone, which was in the Sheriff's Department's possession. So the phone's in their possession, and for months, so they had plenty of time to plant these text messages and argue that they were messages between me and my co-defendant. And they used that as the grounds for the search warrant, but they weren't introduced at trial at all yet. And my co-defendant, even at trial, testified I didn't have a phone at this period of time. So, and Sierra Williams even stated that to the police that I didn't have a phone in her interview. In 2012, I had a Samsung Galaxy Prevail. That was the cell phone I had in 2012. And the sheriff's department seized that phone. The San Diego Mirror belonged to a friend of mine at the time, and the sheriff's department never tried to contact the service providers to verify these text messages' authenticity. They never tried to contact the service provider or even run the registration on the phone to see who purchased the phone, because they know the phone doesn't belong to me. And if they were to do that, that evidence would show that the phone didn't belong to me, and that doesn't favor their case. So it just gives you goes to show you that how this county is when it comes to that, because they're just dirty cops. The whole county's dirty. DA's offices, they're all dirty.
I tell you, that's what I love about these high school girls, man. I get older, they stay the same age. Yes, they do.
It's easy to see why law enforcement says technology has changed the game.
Digital evidence touches all of our investigations.
During his 13 years as an FBI special agent, William Kennedy with the Little Rock field office has observed the growing emphasis on such evidence.
I think about my own neighborhood and the prevalence of Ring cameras and how many times something as simple as a doorbell camera has helped local law enforcement solve crimes as well. So, technology touches almost every aspect of our lives now.
That also includes our computers, tablets, and smartphones.
Cell phones are almost always with us. So, if we can get a hold of somebody's cell phone, that's usually the treasure trove of evidence that we need.
And he says the Capitol insurrection is a recent example.
The fact that people are using their cell phones to take selfies and then they're sending those out to their family members has helped us solve and identify who some of these individuals were.
This photo the DA presented to the jury as evidence of parties going on in May through July 2011. Yet as you can see here, the date is in 2012. Our investigators simply checked on the names of individuals listed in Searles' case and checked on their social media accounts. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure this investigative technique out. We discovered a vast trove of evidence, dated pictures of partygoers at the residence in question, yet, for whatever reason, KCSO and the Kern DA office wishes the public to believe they never thought about checking witnesses' social media accounts. For example, here is a photo of partygoers in the backyard of the residence, dated in 2012. These dates are important because the witnesses claim parties only occurred between May to July 2011. It is also extremely important to note that co-defendant Randy Miller would have never been charged in this case past the point of preliminary hearing if it wasn't for Detective Dorkin's intentional lying to the courts to secure a conviction. During the preliminary hearing, Detective Dorkin testified that Catherine Miller told Randy she was in fact 13 years old. Yet when you review her interview with Detective Dorkin, she stated that Randy thought they were 18 years old because Tony told him they were 18 years old, and that Randy never specifically asked them their ages. Even Detective Dorkin's police report illustrated this. In the state of California, one cannot be held to face charges if one reasonably believed the person they were engaging in a sex act with was of legal consenting age. The court stated, based off of Detective Dorkin's testimony, that Catherine told him her age, there was enough evidence to hold Randy Miller to face charges. When reviewing the case, you really do not need to go any further than the investigating detective's actions to know this case was nothing more than a frame job. Here we have the lead detective. He lied to the media, he lied to the courts, and he lied to internal affairs investigators.
By themselves. Officers say Harris also forced two girls to engage in sex acts together while he videotaped that.
Yet Dorkin told the courts that Searles-Harris did not force them to do a video.
Fake officers say Harris forced young girls to perform sex acts for another man.
Dorkin continuously told the courts that Levi was present during the night of the alleged film being made. However, Levi told the detective in his interview that he was not present during this alleged film being made. Dorkin told the courts Levi never gave him a time when he seen the alleged film. However, Levi clearly stated he seen it the next day. Dorkin testified in preliminary hearing that Levi told him Searles pointed what looked like a black 9mm at him. Levi stated Searles had guns but did not clarify which was pointed at him. No gun was found, and another witness claimed there was a silver gun. Dorkin did not re-interview either witness for clarification and simply wrote in his report a black 9mm. Dorkin testified that Levi positively identified the two in the alleged video as Catherine and Sierra. Levi, however, did not. He simply said it might have been her or one of the twins. Stormy claims the video was of a boy and girl. Dorkin testified in the first preliminary that Sierra did not remember what type of pill she was given nor identify the color, shape, brand markings, so the courts dismissed the drug charge. When the case was refiled during the second preliminary, Dorkin testified Sierra told him they were Vicodin. Sierra never identified Vicodin, only orange pills. Dorkin wrote in his police report that I asked Sierra if she was in a video, and she said she believed so. However, that is not what Sierra told Dorkin during her interview. She said, "I don't believe so," falsifying his police report. Dorkin wrote Sierra said red and blue team were gang-related, yet when asked, she stated she doesn't know what it means. Dorkin testified that Catherine told Randy she was 13. Yet in her interview with him, Catherine told Dorkin that Randy thought they were 18 because Tony told him they were, and that Randy never asked them their ages. Dorkin even put this statement in his police report, contradicting his in-court testimony. Dorkin wrote in his police report that Catherine said the cameras were there to detect law enforcement, however, we could not find this statement in any of Catherine's interviews. Dorkin testified in court to Catherine saying they performed the alleged acts for alcohol and Vicodin. Yet in her interview, she stated it was for pills and money. Dorkin testified that Catherine did not tell him how many pills she had been given or taken. The reason for this lie is because what she actually said is unbelievable. Catherine told Dorkin during her interview that she took 7 before and 15 afterwards. If these were Vicodin, it's enough to tranquilize a horse, let alone kill a 85-pound teen. Dorkin wrote in his police report that he asked Bailey if she knew a Anthony Searles-Harris who goes by Tony, and she said yes. In her interview, Dorkin only asked her if she knew a Tony, and her response was, "I don't even know him." Dorkin wrote in his police report that Smith told him Searles gave Stormy Vicodin. Nowhere in Smith's interview does it show this. The only reference to pills in Smith's interview is the statement he gave Stormy pills. This, of course, does not identify what pills she was allegedly given. Dorkin wrote in his police report that Smith told him Searles was a pervert, yet nowhere in her interview does Smith make this statement. Dorkin wrote in his police report that Shelby told him Searles provided them with alcohol. However, in her interview with Dorkin, she told him Tony never did it, was always his friends. Dorkin wrote in his police report that Prudhomme told him she had attended multiple parties at the residence in question. Yet in her interview, she clearly states she was only there one time. Dorkin interviewed Sierra multiple times, in which he continuously asked her if she had sex with Searles. She denied having any sexual contact with Searles through the span of 3 long interviews. It was not until midway through her 3rd interview does Dorkin become frustrated with the fact she is refusing to lie for him and claims she was sexually assaulted by Searles. He then states he was going to turn off his recording device. He claims it was off for a few seconds only. However, when the device comes back on, Sierra is in tears and makes a horrid allegation of rape against Searles, an allegation she does not make during the course of the trial. We believe, as all the evidence suggests, Dorkin turned off the recorder to threaten and intimidate Sierra into complying with his demands to make false allegations against Searles, and that is what transpired during the course of the recorder being turned off. When Dorkin interviewed Catherine, he provided her with a photo lineup. She was unable to identify Searles as the suspect, and when asked to identify the suspect, she said, "He's not in here. Searles was photo number 2. In the interview transcripts, they cut off the interview, so the reader cannot see what her response was in a failed attempt to conceal the fact she didn't identify Searles as the perpetrator. He then claims his batteries in the recorder died, and that's why you can't see what she said. Yet, according to defense counsel and Searles, you hear her say that on the audio tape. Isn't it funny how when the alleged victims say something that favors the defense, his audio recorder just stops working? Dorkin provided the prosecution and defense with 3 interview transcripts, yet then testified in court to only interviewing her twice. The second alleged interview, you only hear his voice on the audio tape. You cannot hear Catherine at all. Yet this is the interview Dorkin claims she really opened up and freely provided all the information they needed, yet we can't hear her say anything? Then his 3rd interview with Catherine, all she had to do was answer yes or no. This is improper questioning and coaching. Dorkin even tells one witness to make up any story you need, literally instructing a witness to lie. Dorkin wrote in his police report that Sierra told him Randy was present the night Tony alleged to have raped her, yet we could not find this statement in her interview. In the first case filing, Dorkin testified in court that Searles never had sex with Catherine and never propositioned her for sex. Yet when the case was dismissed and refiled, Dorkin testified in court that Searles did proposition her for sex by offering her alcohol and pills in exchange for her performing sex acts on another man. Dorkin continuously changes his story in order to defame Searles and label him a monster. Dorkin asked Catherine if she knew the other man's name. She said she couldn't remember, and instead of giving her the opportunity to think, he simply gives her the name he wants her to say, which is Randy. Dorkin shows one witness a series of photos and asks the witness to write down that they seen them at the house. Instead of asking them where they may have seen them, he is instructing the witness where to say they seen them. Dorkin asks Sierra to identify an item with names written on it. She continuously guesses wrong, and when he gets frustrated with her inability to give the answer he wants her to say, he tells her what he wants her to say.
This nigga was clearly lying.
Sometimes grown-ups need to lie. It's hard to explain, but if... Max, no one can survive in the adult world if they have to stick to the truth. I could lose my case, I could lose my promotion, I could even lose my job. Now I need your help, Max, okay?
Whenever the Sheriff's Department gets a call about an alleged incident of abuse involving a minor, protocol requires that they contact Child Protective Services so that they can conduct a forensic interview with the child. Child Protection Services were never notified by Detective Dorkin or his partner about the allegations against Searles involving Sierra and Catherine. Child Protection Services never interviewed Sierra and Catherine. Protocol requires a multi-agency investigation to ensure investigation integrity. Thorough investigation occurs and everything is on the up and up with the investigation. Dorkin knows to contact Child Protection Services, which is illustrated in this search warrant, for an unrelated case. So why did he not want Child Protection Services involved in Searles' investigation? Dorkin testified he did not have any way to narrow down the timeline of the allegations from May to July. This, of course, is untrue. Dorkin was told by both Sierra and Catherine that Searles has brought them to Planned Parenthood to get birth control right after they allegedly performed oral copulation on Randy. Planned Parenthood would have a record of this visit if it transpired, and it would give an exact date for the alleged crime. So why did he not investigate this? The reason is because he knows the allegations are false, and there is no need to go investigate a lead for crime that you know did not occur. Dorkin claims that Searles videotaped Catherine and Sierra having sex in a bathtub. If he truly believed this filming occurred and the video did exist, he would have executed a warrant for both Searles' prior residence, which is where they claim the alleged crimes occurred, and his current residence, which Dorkin and the Sheriff's Office had prior knowledge Searles was living. The evidence of which is the 5/14/2012 event log that illustrates Searles lived at the East Bakersfield residence before they conducted their search on Searles' prior residence. The preservation of evidence is why law enforcement conducts search warrants. As you can see in the attack documents, Dorkin filed for search warrants in an unrelated case for 2 different locations at the same period of time against another defendant, so he knows protocol. He accuses Mr. Miller of being Searles' conspirator but does not execute warrants at the same time. He doesn't search Miller's residence until after Searles' arrest. Even Dorkin's own warrants illustrate Searles was living there. Dorkin and the prosecution did not provide one single time-stamped photo of any party taking place May 1st to July 10th, 2011, which is the exact time frame they claim these alleged parties transpired. We could not find one single photograph over anyone's social media accounts of parties taking place during this time period in that residence. Every photo we found out of the dozens were in 2012. Every photo the prosecution presented as evidence of parties in 2011, they did not provide timestamps for those photos. We found all the photos they provided as evidence, in each one with a timestamp of 2012. Dorkin alleges that he was investigating Searles from April 30th, 2011 to well after his arrest on October 15th, 2012. Yet when asked to provide any notes or photos, Dorkin claims he destroyed them all. He claims Searles was hosting parties with minors and was a sexual predator, and he was keeping him under surveillance for approximately 6 months, yet is unable to provide a single photograph with Searles next to a minor or in the same proximity as a minor. He doesn't request a wiretap warrant to monitor Searles' cell phone calls. He doesn't monitor anyone's social media accounts, doesn't interview neighbors to see if they've seen anything suspicious. He literally investigated nothing. In Levi's, Catherine's, and Sierra's interviews shown here, Dorkin does not state the dates of the interviews. Excluding Catherine Miller's first interview, however, the date of said interview was removed from the transcript and scrubbed from the audio tape provided to defense. These three witnesses were the alleged victims. When it comes to Sierra's interview, her second interview, she states Levi has been in and out of jail. Dorkin confirms this. This statement is important because when we did a criminal background check on Levi, his earliest arrest was April 2013, months after Searles' arrest. Proving her second, third, and fourth interviews could not have been given on the dates Dorkin alleges they were. Yet again, we reiterate the dates should have been given at the beginning of the interview, which he does with every non-essential witness. Dorkin interviewed a multitude of witnesses. All of these witnesses said the same exact thing. Sierra was 18 years old during these alleged parties. Yet Dorkin told the court she was 17 because Sierra was the only one to say she was 17. It is our belief that Dorkin threatened Sierra with imprisonment if she was unwilling to cooperate with them on framing Searles, and once he was able to force her to cooperate, he pushed the lie that she was 17 during this time period and that Searles had raped her. During the course of our investigation, we discovered key phrases Dorkin used in his police report that he also used in a multitude of police reports he filed in unrelated cases. One such key phrase is, then chuckled nervously, which he claimed Searles did when asked if he knew why he was sitting there being a jail cell. He claimed Searles responded with yup and then chuckled nervously. You do not hear a nervous chuckle on the audio tape. Searles denies chuckling nervously, and we found this exact phrase used by Dorkin in 16 other police reports he filed. One such was in his investigation against Jared Ramirez. This is a typical tactic used by law enforcement officers to illustrate the defendant acted in a guilty manner. So when the jury would read the police report, they would have that in their minds. Why chuckle nervously if you've done nothing wrong? Yet 16 of Dorkin's police reports we reviewed all contained this exact phrase. Dorkin had more than enough evidence to prove if these crimes occurred that Sierra was an adult and not a child. Not only based on the fact several witnesses told him she was 18 at this time period, but the fact Catherine Miller told him that Sierra was the one encouraging her to perform oral sex in order to get money. This makes Sierra a co-conspirator, not a victim. Lastly, Dorkin alleges Searles would not cooperate with their investigation, claiming he refused to answer any of their questions. This, however, is false. Searles was interviewed by Dorkin and told Dorkin he would answer any of their questions once he had an attorney present. Exercising your constitutional right to have counsel present before questioning is not refusing to cooperate. Dorkin never made another attempt to interview Searles. Simply, the first attempt was nothing but a show to appear as if he was following protocol and nothing more.
Truthful. Why would they lie? Well, depends on, the underlying facts, what led to the statement. Children are innocent. Most of the time they probably won't lie. But if it's being fed to them what to say and so forth, it's a very delicate kind of a situation. They needed to be treated with sensitivity, yes, but at the same time, if they're to be useful and they're going to send somebody away for 10, 15, 20 years, then, you have to be able to make sure that they're not dealt with improperly, that you are getting the truth and what they are saying is corroborated.
There was selective reinforcement of certain kinds of responses, and there are a number of studies in the literature that show that when this constellation of forces comes together, that you can get children to make statements about things that never happened, and statements that can be really quite damaging.
Harry Duckworth was a suspect in a sex crimes report. Dorkin is required to record any interviews or conversations he has with Duckworth. Yet Dorkin never provided a recording for his first phone conversation with Duckworth. He recorded his phone conversation with Catherine Miller, but not with Duckworth. Nor does he make a note or reference in his police report to having any other conversations with Duckworth than the one interview about Searles. Yet Duckworth's interview transcripts and audio tape show Dorkin had previous conversations with Duckworth. If he was not conspiring with Duckworth, he would have recorded the conversation and illustrated it in the police report.
We first told you Anthony Searles-Harris was arrested, accused of having parties where young girls were involved in sex acts and given alcohol. Eyewitness News reporter Carol Ferguson has more from court documents we obtained. Carol?
A lot of the material in the investigation report is very graphic. Officers say Harris forced young girls to perform sex acts for another man, and he forced himself on one victim.
The appellate courts even ruled he did not force the teens to perform sex acts.
You are charged with lewd and lascivious acts with a child.
Anthony Searles-Harris faces 4 felony molestation charges. At his Oildale house, officers say he had parties giving young girls lots of alcohol and some drugs. Investigators say Harris had sex with one young girl. He pushed her back on his bed. She told officers she said no at first, but didn't fight him off. One girl says Harris also exposed himself. From his house, officers seized items including a cell phone. They say many of the contacts on it were for underage girls. In the investigation, one girl said men at the parties would pay Harris to set up sexual encounters with young girls. One man reportedly paid Harris about $200 for 2 girls to perform oral sex. The girls were 13 and 17 years old. One girl told officers she was scared to tell about what was happening. Harris threatened her. A man told officers Harris had a gun and pointed what looked like a 9mm at him. Another witness says Harris bragged about a gun stolen from a cop.
Harry Duckworth was the one bragging about owning a stolen gun.
Officers say Harris also forced 2 girls to engage in sex acts together while he videotaped that. One victim, 13 years old.
This too is false.
Dorkin testified in court that Searles did not force these girls into performing in a video. Yet he told the media Searles did.
Officers say Harris then showed that video to other teenagers. In the house, officers say they found an album with suggestive photos of what looked like underage girls.
This too is false.
Investigators say the evidence shows Harris prefers teenage girls, and a cell phone message shows he's a predator who looks for opportunities to take advantage of girls that age.
And when you review the prosecution's exhibit list, you'll see that there is no photo album of provocatively posed girls. There is no text messages that were presented to the jury. So the media is just throwing out all these lies that the sheriff's department is telling them to say.
Searles-Harris was first arrested back in October of last year. Kern County Sheriff's deputies say he was throwing parties for underage girls at his home on Oildale Drive. A 13 and 17-year-old victim told deputies Searles-Harris gave them pills and booze and then had sex with them there.
Both of the alleged victims deny having sex with Searles. Sierra does make a false rape allegation against Searles when forced to by detectives, then later recants.
The victims also told deputies Searles-Harris forced them to have sex with another man. That man paid Searles-Harris.
Local man convicted of hosting sex parties with underage girls at his Oildale home learned his fate today. Anthony Searles-Harris was sentenced to 12 years in prison, of which the DA's office says he'll likely end up serving about 10 of those years. Attorneys say he was arrested back in 2012 after several teenage girls came forward saying they were lured to his home, provided with alcohol and drugs, and then forced to commit sexual acts with several men. One of the girls was just 13 years old. Searles-Harris will also have to register as a sex offender for the rest of his life.
Look at all of that fake news. It's unbelievable.
The media also accuses Searles of using multiple aliases like Randy and Jason, and that he is arrested for second-degree burglary and drug possession. According to the Bakersfield Police Department, Searles has no arrests for second-degree burglary nor drug possession, and according to both BPD and the FBI, Searles has no known aliases other than variations of his own name. Like Tony Searles, even court records show no other aliases than his own name.
And when I got out of prison in 2018, I checked up to see what all news articles and videos and shit were about my case, and I found several of them, and I watched them because I didn't see any of these news articles while I was locked up in county jail or in prison. I didn't know what the news was saying about me. I filed civil suit against the media over the lies that they were saying about my case, and when I added the links to each media thing that was found to my civil suit, the media deleted those articles and those videos. They deleted them all.
We utilized the Wayback Machine and was able to find several of the media clips that the local media had removed from their websites and the internet. The media intentionally lied in order to assist the Kern County Sheriff's Office in their corruption. Anyone could go to the county website and look up Searles' criminal record and see on the court's website what his known aliases are, leaving the only conclusion to be that their lies were intentional in order to defame Searles and turn the public opinion against him, which is the primary purpose of the media, a tool to control the narrative. All the witnesses who were interviewed by Dorkin were all friends and family of Harry Duckworth. Those who testified against Searles were friends and family of Harry Duckworth. Levi Holcomb was one of Harry's best friends. Stormy Farley was in love with Harry Duckworth and was Harry's best friend Mikey Pedersen's younger sister. Stormy has had a sexual relationship with Harry, and this continued for years. Bryant Perry is married to Harry Duckworth's aunt. Lisa Goins is Harry's aunt, as illustrated by her daughter Bailey admitting to Harry being her cousin. Teresa Knight is Stormy's mother and has known Harry for all his life. Shelby Thompson was best friends with Harry and his underage girlfriend Monique Smith. Catherine Miller was like a sister to Harry by his own admission. Sierra Williams was best friends with Harry's underage girlfriend Monique Smith. Every single person who testified against Searles had a close personal relationship with Harry Duckworth, the man Searles reported to the Kern County Sheriff's Office for having sex with underage minors. Through the course of our investigation into this case, we discovered that Harry Duckworth was an informant for the Kern County Sheriff's Office, which is not only confirmed by his role in Searles' case, but confirmed through sources within law enforcement. Harry Duckworth had assisted law enforcement in multiple cases.
I ain't saying nothing.
Life without parole.
It was him. And that dude hiding behind that girl right there.
This also explains why Dorkin was presented with an overwhelming amount of evidence proving Harry was having sex with minors and did not make an arrest on Harry Duckworth. To give you a glimpse into who Harry Duckworth is, we simply need to check out his social media account. Harry is a huge supporter of police, which of course he would be seeing as they keep him out of jail when he molests kids. A convicted felon who is in possession of a firearm in violation of federal law, he posts perverse quotes and images of restrained minors, which is troubling to say the least. He has photos of him and his underage girlfriend Monique Smith, and once they broke up, that's when it appears he got on board with the whole white supremacy thing. Multiple witnesses told Dorkin Harry was engaging in inappropriate behavior with minors, sex acts, etc. Yet Harry was never arrested. There is an abundance of photos showing Harry drinking alcohol and being with underage girls. There is even a photo of Harry Duckworth kissing Monique Smith. More than enough evidence to convict, yet Harry remained out of jail. Stormy, Sierra, Catherine Bryant all testified that Searles was the one who provided alcohol to these alleged parties. Nor did Rivello subpoena any of the liquor stores Searles instructed him to, which would have shown Harry was the one going to these stores to acquire liquor, not Searles. Catherine Miller, shown here holding an illegal firearm and throwing up a white supremacy gang sign, got herself a get-out-of-jail-free card with the homicide she was involved in. Danielle Carlin was tied to a chair in the shed she lived in when she was set on fire and burned alive, Catherine Miller being the one who ignited the fire. Catherine, her boyfriend at the time, and two other individuals went to Danielle's place of residence in an attempt to steal drugs from her. When Danielle resisted, she was overpowered, tied up to a chair, and burned alive. The Kern County Sheriff's Office was informed Catherine Miller was involved, yet knew they were in a Mexican standoff with Catherine Miller. If they arrested her for the murder, she could snitch on them for framing Searles. It was a case of mutual self-destruction. Investigators then used leads fed to them by Catherine to point the finger at Lauren Phillips. If our investigators can reach out from one country to another via phone calls and speak with Catherine's friends and hear testimony of Catherine bragging about killing this girl, so could the sheriff's office.
One woman is dead tonight after an early morning structure fire in Oildale. That blaze now being investigated as a potential homicide. Good evening. Thank you for being with us tonight. I'm Brandon Johansson. That fire broke out on Beardsley Avenue with reports of a person trapped inside. ABC's Andrew Worth joins us live now in studio with the latest developments. Andrew?
Yeah, Brandon, the fire broke out this morning at about 1 o'clock when multiple buildings in the neighborhood went up in flames. Kern County Fire responded and were able to get the fire out, but one victim was found dead inside. When crews got to the neighborhood, they found a motorhome and a nearby shed engulfed in flames. Crews were able to get that fire out in about 10 minutes, but after searching the debris, they say they found a woman's body. Tonight, family members tell 23 ABC that the woman who lost her life in the fire is Danielle Carlin. Earlier tonight, the Kern County Sheriff's Department said her death is now being investigated as a suspicious death, and the investigation is ongoing. Now, the cause of that fire is also still under investigation, and as we always do, we will continue to keep you updated on our website, turnto23.com. In studio, Andrew Worth, 23 ABC.
Both Stormy Farley and Teresa Knight are informants for the Kern County Sheriff's Office. Through our investigation, we have found multiple cases in which both Stormy and her mother Teresa have provided information for the Kern County Sheriff's Office on people arrested. In several cases, they have even went under different names under the direction of the District Attorney's Office in a failed attempt to conceal their identities. One such case is the case of People v. Adam Hill. Stormy used the name Stormy Dawn and Teresa used the name Teresa Long. Our sources in law enforcement confirm both Teresa Long and Teresa Knight are the same person and that Stormy Farley and Stormy Dawn are the same person. During the course of Searles' trial, Teresa admitted she was the person involved in People v. Adam Hill. Harry Duckworth is the perfect patsy for the sheriff's office. If Searles can prove his innocence, it all points to Harry being the one behind it, leaving the sheriff's office blameless. They can simply say Harry had his friends and family lie and they were just doing their job.
Well, my ex-wife and I split up over her mother, and her mother's refusal to stop interfering in our relationship. Now, my ex-wife also admitted in trial to being in a sexual relationship with Harry Duckworth. And when you review my ex-wife's trial transcripts and her alleged child transfer records, you will see she testified in court that every time we did child transfer, a KCSO deputy was present for the child transfer. And this is true. Every time we did child transfer, she would call KCSO to have a deputy present. So how do we know that her child transfer records were false? One, they do not match the dates of my own records. Two, if you look at the end of the second page, there you will see that she puts 2014 as the date. 2014 was when I was going through trial, September 2014. I believe she printed up these false records in August in order to provide them to the prosecution to use in my trial. I also believe that this is something that Detective Dorkin was telling her to do during text message communication with her. You compare her records she provided to the Kern County Sheriff's Office event logs, you will see no keep-the-peace records exist for that time frame that you're alleging. She also testified that all our child transfers took place at the residence in question, yet not only do my records show they occurred elsewhere, I also have video evidence which I provided you proving they occurred elsewhere. In one of those videos, I also brought up the fact that she would have me go to the Bakersfield Police Department station for child transfer, and then she'd send me over to Mount Vernon Avenue for child transfers. So our child transfers did not take place at one location during this period of time. They were wherever she deemed them to be.
Thursday, you should let me see your Thursday if you were trying to make me see my daughter. You weren't. Oh, meet me on Mount Vernon when you're walking. Meet me by BPD when you're walking. And you give me what? Less than a half an hour head's notice?
KCSO records show that our KTP transfers did not occur at the time she has listed as her visitation. So if you compare their records to the time she's claiming that I had visitations, you'll see right there that her records are false. Between May 2011 and July 2011, the alleged time frame of these alleged crimes, I never had child transfers at the residence in question, which is confirmed by KCSO event logs. Her records were falsified, and I was never provided, her records were falsified, and they were never provided to the defense until the day she testified in my trial. This is a Brady violation. I informed Prosecution Nagel that all she had to do was look at my family law case, and she could see when my visitations were granted by the courts, and then all she had to do was compare those to the Kern County Sheriff's Office event logs, Tony's testimony, my personal records for child transfers, and her records. Then she'd be able to see that she was presenting false evidence to the jury. And Nagel didn't do any of this. She pursued with the evidence she was given the day of trial, and Ravello didn't argue against this either. While I went pro se representation, I subpoenaed my ex-wife's phone records, specifically seeking communication between my ex-wife and Detective Dorkin. After I subpoenaed her phone records, Detective Dorkin provided the prosecution and the defense with a revised version of his police report, where he had added 3 additional pages. These pages were added to illustrate the fact that he had communication with Tony Barber and that he had deleted his text messages with her. I brought this issue up with Domino and Judge Bush, since she did not turn in the requested material that I had subpoenaed.
the judge said that he cannot fathom any information she could have in those text messages that is relevant to the case at hand. You know, I'm accusing the cops of framing me. Of course, you know, anything he might be saying to her could be relevant. Detectives told the media that they found what appeared to be photos of girls in the house. None of these photos were ever introduced at trial. I was never charged with possession of child porn in relation to these photos, and supporting evidence that these photos were planted is the fact that both my ex-wife and Child Protection Services have searched the residence. I was going through a divorce with my ex-wife, and she called CPS on me. She would call the cops on me continuously just to harass me. And if either one of them, if my ex-wife, when she conducted her court-ordered search of my residence, the court gave her permission to search my residence. If she would have seen any photos of a girl, she would have called the cops. She would have made a mention of it in the family law case. She would have brought it to the courts, you know, making complaints about that. And it's the same thing with CPS. When she called CPS complaining that the house was unsafe because it was unstable, there was a hole in the wall, she was claiming. CPS came out to the house. They searched every single room of the house. They checked the refrigerator, all the drawers. They were looking for food and clothing and all this. Make sure my daughter had everything she needed. But they would have contacted KCSOS. They would have conducted an investigation themselves if they would have seen any photos of provocatively posed girls anywhere. And that none of this was ever done because none of these photos existed. All of this was planted there so that KCSO could make lies to the media.
In the house, officers say they found an album with suggestive photos of what looked like underage girls.
And again, none of this information, none of these photos were brought up at trial.
What's your case? Our case is simply this.
Government misconduct and bad lawyering by defense attorneys. So some of the government misconduct has already been discussed regarding eyewitness identification procedures or false confessions being given. But it also includes the failure to turn over evidence by police and Brady material by prosecutors. And in addition to government agents, we see in many, many cases just bad defense lawyering at the time of trial. Not doing full investigations or any investigations into the claims of innocence being made by the defendant.
The very first conversation I had with Ravello was he wanted to let me know that if I did not take the deal, he was going to personally assure me that I would lose at trial, that he would do the bare minimum to ensure that none of the evidence I want gets introduced, and that I'm guaranteed to lose at trial if I don't take the deal. That was the first conversation we ever had together. And I spoke to him about 5 times total. When he came out and seen me, about 5 times. And each time he came out and saw me, it was, "Are you going to take the deal?" And I would say no, and he'd say, "Okay, then we have nothing else to talk about." And he wouldn't talk to me. He never once asked me about my case. He never asked me if I was innocent. What evidence do I have that would verify my innocence? Who could he speak with? He didn't. During my trial, he could have asked questions to witnesses that had information, the prosecution witnesses that had information that would have helped my defense, like Shelby Thompson, for example. He didn't question Shelby Thompson. She stated in her interview that Tony never provided him with alcohol, that it was always his friends. And he could ask her about that in trial, and he never did. He didn't question her at all, even though her testimony would counter the other people's testimony, because multiple people said that I provided them with alcohol, but Shelby said that Tony never did. And when we were sitting in trial, I was asking him, Ravello, to ask questions to the prosecution's witnesses, and there's a mic that's on the defense stand. He grabbed the mic and turned it all the way around and put it behind the desk so that it wasn't picking up the questions I was asking him to ask. The prosecution introduced my ex-wife's supposed child transfer records. Ravello did not object to that, even though it was a Brady violation. They never argued it a Brady violation with the courts because they weren't provided to us until the day she testified. That's when Nagel gave the supposed records to Ravello and to myself. And I even brought that up to Nagel. I told Nagel, I said, if you just look at my family law case, here's the case number, you will see that these records she's giving you are false. Ravello didn't call forward any witnesses on my behalf. I had multiple witnesses that showed up at court every single day of my trial. 3 witnesses in particular were my mother, Mabel, and Daryl, all of which could testify that I was not living at the residence at the time in question. I didn't move in until September, which is months after the time in question. And they testified that I don't drink, I don't use drugs or anything like that. And the prosecution witnesses are known snitches around the neighborhood, and KCSO records would verify that as well. Ravello didn't present any of the evidence that you guys found, and the stuff that I provided you. Ravello did not present any of that stuff into my trial in my defense, and he didn't argue against the evidence that they were presenting that was clearly falsified, like Nikki's records, for example. Ravello didn't do any investigation whatsoever. If he could have investigated the phone records of this phone that they're claiming were mine, if they would have investigated who the phone's name was under, that would prove it wasn't my phone. The phone's contact list in the phone, they have multiple numbers in there. Tony's home, which is my home number, was listed in that phone. My mother's was Tony's mom, that's my mom, had her number. Tony's sister was in there, that's my sister's phone number. And if he would have investigated that, he could have verified all that. My mom still has the same number today, same exact number. So they could have verified. That would show that the phone contact list would show that phone did not belong to me. Ravello didn't investigate the Planned Parenthood records. He didn't interview any witnesses on my behalf. Ravello admitted in multiple Marsden hearings to the courts that he believed I was a political prisoner, and that I was being persecuted for actions I've taken against the Kern County Sheriff's Office. And if he believed this, like he told the courts he believed this, why didn't he file any motions on my behalf to assist me or protect me from the Kern County Sheriff's Department while I was in custody? He filed no motions like that on my behalf. He's the truck of all trucks, in my opinion. If Ravello would have investigated this stuff, he would have discovered another person was arrested under my name, which opens up the possibility of mistaken identity, since Catherine Miller never identified me as a suspect. He could have asked if these people were at the house when I lived there, why did none of these people mention to the police or prosecution about my 2 dogs? He could have discovered several photos of the mirror with no names on it. He could have discovered the child transfer videos, which debunk my ex-wife's claims that all our child transfers took place in the residence in question. He could have discovered everything that was presented in your documentary. If you guys could find this stuff over a decade later, Ravello and his PI could have discovered this stuff within months if they were actually doing their job. And that right there shows you ineffective assistance of counsel.
Ravello also has a history of ineffective assistance of counsel. In one such case illustrated here, the appellate courts determined Ravello did not represent his client to even the minimal standards. During Searles' Ferretta motion, Ravello admits to the courts to having access to video footage which would exonerate his client, and never provided that footage to the trial court. When Searles went pro se representation, Ravello was required to hand over all documents in Searles' case file to Searles. Ravello did not provide Searles with any of Hinman's notes or evidence Hinman collected. Hinman was Searles' prior court-appointed attorney who was removed from representing Searles on the grounds of conflict of interest, because after Searles was appointed Hinman and as his attorney, Hinman was actually investigating Searles' claims of innocence, so his higher-ups had him recuse himself on the false grounds of the public defender's office representing Levi Holcomb in his arrest, which occurred much later after they were already representing Searles.
And then, when it comes to the jury, right? A jury is supposed to be fair and unbiased. Okay, it's not supposed to have anybody who's been a victim of sexual abuse on it, if it's a sexual abuse case, and or friends of close personal friends of victims. They knew somebody who was a victim of sexual assault. And then we had and amongst them, sprinkled into the jury, we also had people whose family members or friends were in law enforcement who worked for the sheriff's department. They were sprinkled on in there too. And then we have the primary suspect of the jury misconduct, which was jury number 4. 3 jury members came forward after trial and spoke to Ravello and stated that that there should be a retrial because there's definitely jury misconduct within the jury deliberations. And all 3 of them pointed fingers at jury number 4, Arturo Fuentes. He was a CPS employee, clinical therapist for Child Protection Services. And this guy who worked for CPS, we tried having him removed from the jury during a jury selection because he admitted to knowing 2 people scheduled to testify against me. So you know 2 people that are testifying against me, and somehow magically you remain on the jury, and so, that's a fair juror. You're involved with somebody involved in my case. And when the courts asked him how he knew these people, he said, "Oh, it was confidential, so he couldn't explain to the courts how he knew them." And the courts just accepted that. Oh, okay, it's confidential, so you don't have to tell us how you know these people. But he knew 2 people by his own admission that were testifying against me, and he got to stay on the jury. And then during the jury deliberations, he was told by the courts not to use his credentials to sway any of the jurors for a not guilty or guilty verdict or whatever, and he agreed not to, and he was told not to speak to anybody outside the jury deliberations room about the case. He was given several instructions by the courts, and he violated each instruction he was given. And the juror number 4 told the jury that, I'm a clinical psychologist for Child Protection Services, and these victims aren't lying because they're liars. They're lying because they're victims of sexual abuse, and they show all the signs of being victims of sexual abuse, and that's why they're lying. So, they're not lying. Their stories aren't matching up because they're lying. The stories aren't matching up because they're victims of sexual abuse. So if 2 people are victims of sexual abuse, which is alleged Catherine Miller and Sierra Williams, then when Bryant Perry took the stand and he lied and got caught in a lie, well, that's not because he's a liar. That's because they're victims of sexual abuse. This is the argument he made. And when Stormy Farley got caught on the stand lying, and when Levi Holcomb got on the stand, and when everybody took the stand against me and testified, well, their stories weren't matching up because these 2 people were victims of sexual abuse. Because these 2 people over here were victims of sexual abuse, that means every other story from every other person testifying would not match up because of it. Does that make sense to you? That's insane. And then there was also several other members of the jury who were bullying, who jumped on the bandwagon with this guy and were bullying people into a guilty verdict. But 3 people came forward and said that their decisions really wasn't their own, that they felt bullied and pressured into a guilty verdict. And they all spoke to Ravello. Ravello collected one statement from one of them, and one of the jury members, jury member number 5 that we've been in contact with, stated that Ravello would hit on her and make her feel uncomfortable, and that's why she really didn't want to meet up with him, is because he's telling her they should go out to dinner and all this. If you're an attorney, you're not supposed to be coming at jurors like that, especially when they have material information that aids the defense. And all 3 jurors that came forward all stated the same thing. Jury number 4 was the driving force behind the forcible oral copulation charge. He was adamant that force was used, and it was his clinical opinion as an expert that they were forced into committing oral copulation on co-defendant Randy Miller, which was the only charge I was charged. The 3 charges I have when I was convicted were all for the same crime, was the oral copulation of Randy Miller, allegedly committed by Catherine Miller. All the other charges in regards to all other allegations were dismissed during the course of the trial, and before jury selection. A lot of them got dismissed before jury selection. The DA just dismissed a bunch of them because they weren't the charges. They don't need to convict somebody of 16 felonies. They only need to convict you of one. And when they stack up a bunch of felonies charges, because all they have to do is convict you of one. They don't have to convict you of all of them. They just need to convict you of one. And that's why they add so many charges, because it puts on the jury's mind, well, can you honestly be innocent of all these charges? And there was a jury member that was on the stand and said the same thing. He said, can he actually be guilty of all these charges? And all this, and the prosecution had that jury member removed. Juror number 4 was the driving force behind it all. He was adamant that force was used. He said, in his expert opinion, when he was told not to use credentials or his push his opinions on anyone by the courts, and he said he wouldn't do that. He said in his expert opinion that force was used, and there's all this evidence supporting it, and there's no evidence supporting it. So they convicted me on force based off of what this guy wanted, juror number 4 wanted. And then, through the appellate process, the appellate court dismissed the forcible oral carpulation, said that there was never an allegation of force with the entire trial. So they were unsure as to how the jury came to this conclusion that force was used when there was no allegation of force made during the course of the trial. And it was all because juror number 4, the forcible oral carpulation charge, carried the most prison time in comparison to the other 2 charges. Got hit with 12 years because of the forcible oral carpulation, instead of getting hit with what would have been 6 years and then immediately released.
Juror number 4 was a clinical therapist for CPS, meaning it was his job to conduct forensic interviews with child sex victims. The fact he did not question why no forensic interview was conducted in this case, nor inform the other jurors of that, further supports the argument he was working with KCSO to frame Searles. The original case filing was BF 1445522A, and the state was represented by Assistant District Attorney Domino, who had the entire case file against Searles, so there is no excuse for her not to know of all the information provided in this documentary. Searles filed a motion to dismiss due to outrageous government misconduct and illustrated all the lies and falsifications he could find in the case file in his motion, for which Domino filed her response to, and even after seeing all Dorkin's lies and falsifications of his police report and his perjured testimony and preliminary hearing, she still chose to proceed with the case and go to trial. This makes her a willing participant and co-conspirator in the framing of Searles. When Domino could not find her witnesses to testify, she dismissed the case and refiled it under BF 149855B. When Searles went pro se representation, he provided Domino with a printout screenshot of the photo of the house with the timestamp of 7:14 a.m. Then only after she was provided with this photo does Searles' disk of the search warrant photos go missing, and a new one provided with a new timestamp, which further supports Domino's involvement in this conspiracy. After Domino was provided with the motion to dismiss due to outrageous government misconduct, she could not claim ignorance to Dorkin's lies and falsification. So she removed herself from the case under the false grounds of going on vacation, and the case was handed over to Felicia Nagel. Felicia Nagel represented the state in Searles' trial. When Searles was informed that the case was handed over to Nagel, he wrote Nagel a letter from county jail informing her of the motion to dismiss he filed, and that if she reviewed the evidence within his motion, she would see Dorkin lied, falsified his police report, etc. This notification eliminates any claim of ignorance Nagel may argue and makes her a co-conspirator by allowing the case to go to trial. The day Tony Barber testified against Searles, Nagel provided the defense with Tony's so-called child transfer records. Searles informed Nagel of his family law case and his court-ordered visitation schedule, and that Tony's records were false. Yet Nagel still proceeded to use her records in trial. She committed a Brady violation by not providing the records to defense in a timely manner, and committed a crime by introducing evidence she knew to be false. She even argued the only relevance of Tony Barber's testimony is where the child transfer took place. She used false records to put Searles at the alleged crime scene. Ciara Williams made a horrific allegation of rape, which was of course at the direction of Dorkin. Searles was charged with this alleged rape, yet during the course of the trial, Nagel intentionally avoided asking Ciara about her rape allegation. Nagel did not probe into any of the details of this alleged rape and simply ignored it through the trial. Nagel listed a photo of Harry kissing Monique in her exhibit list as the defendant kissing a female. She presented this image to the jury as such. Nagel knew for a fact this image was not the defendant and was in fact Harry Duckworth. This image Searles provided the sheriff's office in his report against Harry. Searles is 5'11" and Harry Duckworth was 5'7" during this period of time. Monique Smith was roughly 5'3" at this time. Searles identified both people in this image to Nagel. She never attempted to have her investigator confirm this with Harry nor Monique. She intentionally introduced this false evidence to convict Searles. Searles has always had a beard. No beard and the exact same hairline. The prosecution presented these two photos without timestamps to the jury and argued they were taken in 2011. Their witnesses testified to this as well. There is no doubt in our minds that the source the prosecution got their photos from is the same source we found them, which is social media. Nagel issued a subpoena for Randy Miller to testify in Searles' trial. She had Miller testify that he was just an acquaintance of Searles. Randy Miller was Searles' best friend. Miller wrote Searles after the trial was over to explain to him what had transpired, and as he described it, the prosecution wanted him to lie and say they were not best friends. The reason for this is the prosecution would be unable to explain how, if these two were best friends, why Miller was not attending these parties. In the courts, judges are selected at random to be assigned for each court hearing, prelim, trial, etc. Any given case can have on average 4 different judges overseeing EA stage of a criminal proceeding. One of the many problems that has occurred in Searles' case is the fact Judge Bush intentionally implants himself in Searles' case. During the Marsden hearing, Judge Bush instructed the court clerk to ensure any future hearings Searles has, he wants them to be assigned to him. He also instructed the clerk that if Searles were to file any motions pro se, that they are not to file those motions and deny him his due process right. Every defendant has the right to file any motions they deem necessary for their defense. Searles filed several motions that were denied by the clerk's office. When he filed his FERDA motion to go pro se, he requested the courts appoint a private investigator, and they did. Searles had this private investigator go file his motions on his behalf, and the court's clerks were forced to accept, stamp, and file them. Searles filed multiple Marsden motions to have his attorney Ravello removed from representation. The first Marsden motion was heard in front of Judge Somner. Judge Somner agreed that Searles had grounds to remove Ravello as his attorney, as Ravello was not making an effort to communicate with his client, not showing Searles his own case file, and requested that Ravello make the effort, and Ravello claimed he would. So Searles stated to the courts if Ravello would allow him access to his police report and case file, he would not request him be removed. Ravello told the courts he would. He never did. He even argued to the courts on later Marsden hearings that he didn't want to show Searles his case file or police report out of security concerns. When Searles filed his second Marsden motion, because Ravello again did not do as he told the courts he would, Bush was the presiding judge who rejected Searles' request, even though enough grounds existed to remove Ravello. Bush did not want Ravello removed. Searles filed a third Marsden motion and fourth. All were heard in front of Bush, because Bush intentionally implanted himself in the case to ensure Searles would not be able to fire his attorney, nor expose the sheriff's office corruption. Bush denied both those other Marsden motions. Searles was taken to court on his court date 4/24/2014 for his motion to dismiss due to outrageous government misconduct. The presiding judge over this hearing was, you guessed it, Judge Bush. When Searles was transported to court, the sheriff's office did not transport his criminal case file with him. So Searles was left to argue his motions without having any of the necessary documents and notes to do so. For this reason, Searles requested from the courts a continuance, and Judge Bush denied his request. Searles then requested a continuance on the grounds his private investigator was supposed to be present, and he was not. He also had a copy of Searles' motion. Judge Bush denied this request. Searles requested an hour continuance so that he could call his private investigator and find out why he was not present, and to request he show up and bring his extra copy of his motion, and Judge Bush denied this continuance request. None of Searles' requests for continuance were unreasonable. The extenuating circumstance is more than enough grounds to warrant a continuance. Judge Bush ordered Searles he was to argue his motion then and there without his documents, or it would be dismissed with prejudice. The court reporter's transcripts for the motion to dismiss due to outrageous government misconduct have been falsified. When Searles was speaking with the courts, he was requesting a continuance of the motion because the sheriff's office did not transport his case file with him when they transported him to his hearing. Judge Bush said he would not grant a continuance on those grounds. Then Searles requested a short continuance so that he could call his private investigator who was supposed to be present to get his copy of Searles's motion, and again Bush denied this request. Both of these requests were removed from the transcripts. He then requested a continuance to get legal representation. Again, the courts denied this request. In the transcripts, they remove the word continuance and replace it with the word drop. This falsification can be proven in multiple ways. 1. When reviewing the transcript, you can see right here where Judge Bush says, "I'm not going to drop this because you might get legal counsel." No judge, when dealing with a pro se defendant, would object to a pro se defendant wanting to drop their own motion if that was the case. A judge can and does object to continuances. Judges do not have respect for pro se defendant, and if given the opportunity to drop a pro se motion, they do so without argument. 2. When Searles was transported back to Lerdo jail, he called both his mother April and his court-appointed private investigator Bruce Binns from Lerdo. Those phone calls were recorded, as all phone calls are recorded. Searles told his mother what had happened during the hearing. He also told Bruce Binns. Searles' mother took notes of their phone conversation, trial, and interactions with Rivello. As seen in her notes, Searles requested a continuance. Lastly, after Searles was released from prison, he contacted the court reporter's office in an attempt to get retranscribed, something the public is entitled to do. You simply have to pay much more to have it done. When he filed his initial request, he received no answer. He then filed a second request, and the court reporter contacted him via email. She sent him the falsified transcripts via email and stated she would not retranscribe the transcripts. If you have nothing to hide and are being paid for the service, and it's your job to provide said service, why would you not do so? One might be of the mindset that criminal case transcripts couldn't be falsified. Yet Kern County has a long history of falsifying court transcripts and documents. One example is the 1980s satanic child molestation ring trials, where the Attorney General's office had to step in and investigate, resulting in their determination that Kern County did in fact falsify documents and transcripts. Another more recent example is prosecutor Robert Murray falsified transcripts to make it appear that a non-English speaking defendant gave a confession to a crime. This confession never happened. We also have a defendant, Christopher Lightsey, who has argued the courts falsified his court transcripts. We have attempted to gain access to his case file transcripts from the courts and, to our surprise, was denied access. Searles is not the only person to have a complaint against Judge Bush, as you can see by the case information here. Knox filed a civil rights violation suit against Judge Bush. Knox's case was dismissed, not on the grounds his claims did not have merit, but on the grounds that judges have absolute immunity. Judge Bush was notified by defense counsel during multiple Marston hearings that his client was being abused and tortured while in the custody of the Lerdo jail by the Kern County Sheriff's Office. Judge Bush was presented with evidence of this abuse, that evidence being the cigarette burn marks on Searles' arm, in which a deputy of the Kern County Sheriff's Office burned him with cigarettes. The burn marks were fresh and not healed. Yet Bush did not make an inquiry into these abuse allegations, nor did he order Searles to be removed from Lerdo custody. These photos were placed into Searles' mailbox from an anonymous source shortly after he was released from prison. The person in the photos can be identified by the tattoo and yellow ADSEG armband, which is the Lerdo jail inmate identifier. Searles was convicted of 3 felony accounts: oral copulation of a minor under the age of 14, lewd and lascivious act with a minor under the age of 14, and forcible oral copulation of a minor under the age of 14. All 3 accounts stem from the alleged oral copulation of Randy Miller by Catherine Miller. Searles was convicted and sentenced to 12 years in state prison. Roughly 5 years and 7 months into his sentence, the appellate courts overturned Searles' conviction for forcible oral copulation on the grounds no evidence or testimony was presented in trial to support that charge, requiring Searles to go back to the Superior Court for resentencing, and his sentence was dropped to 6 years. While on parole, Searles is required to take polygraph examinations every year. Since Searles maintains his innocence, he gets polygraphed about the allegations against him. Searles has passed every polygraph he has been given. Searles was asked, as an adult, have you ever had sexual contact with any minors? He responded with no, he was telling the truth. He was asked, did you ever have sexual contact with anyone who was unconscious or asleep? He responded with no, he was telling the truth. He was asked, did you force or threaten anyone for sexual contact? His response was no, he was telling the truth.
You said no. The lie detector test determined you are telling the truth.
Searles was released on parole on a 3-year parole term. 2 years into his parole term, parole attempted to get Searles to sign an early release processing form in which stated he had a parole of 20 years. Searles refused and wrote down refused to sign on the grounds he did not have a 20-year parole term. Searles contacted Parole Records Department, who stated that they have a copy of a voluntary side agreement where they claim he agreed to increase his term from 3 years to 20 years. Searles requested a copy of this form, and when you review the document, you can clearly see the signatures do not match. Someone forged Searles' name onto a legal document in order to increase punitive damages against Searles and force him to remain on parole. When you compare Searles' signature to the signature alleged to be his, you can clearly see they do not match. Not only do the signatures do not match, but they do not even spell his last name correctly. The first name is not even legible, but the last name Searles is spelled S-E-A-R-L-S, while Searles is spelled S-E-A-R-L-E-S, and Harris is not even legible. Then, when you look at the date written in, the numbers are separated by slashes and not dashes. Searles used dashes. It is also important to note that this document does not require a fingerprint verification on it, yet can have such dramatic effects on a parolee's freedom and rights. Every other document Searles was given by parole required a fingerprint verification. Searles contacted Parole Internal Affairs in Sacramento, Parole's headquarters, and reported the issue. They referred him to Parole Southern California District. He contacted them and reported the issue. They then referred him to the Bakersfield Parole Office Internal Affairs. Searles called their internal affairs number and left a message on their machine illustrating the issue and awaited a call back that never came. CDCR Parole is required to investigate any internal fraud and criminal activity. However, they have not investigated this. No matter how many times Searles calls them, he has yet to this day to receive a call back. No agent with CDCR Internal Affairs has contacted him about this.
Today, 9/25/2020, my parole officer came over trying to get me to sign new terms of parole conditions. And one of the papers that he's wanting me to sign says Notice and Conditions of Parole. Now, when I was released from prison, I agreed to a 3-year term, Notice Condition of Paroles, and there's my signature. And he tried coming in today and having me sign a new condition of parole. And, I refused to sign it because he put duration. He didn't put any specific time for it. He put duration, and I told him I'm not signing it because the paper they're saying I signed before says a 20-year parole term, and they're saying that this is my signature, and it's not my signature. So I told him unless this notice of condition of parole he's trying to have me sign says 3 years, I'm not signing it. Then he was threatening me with arrest, saying I have to sign it. And he's saying it says the exact same thing all these other papers are saying. So he says the 3-year term I agreed to, it says the exact same thing, but it doesn't, because on the top, mine says 3 years, what I signed. Just 3 years, and this other one says duration. So they're trying to attach that duration to say I agree to the 20-year term, but I'm currently fighting that. This is what I get with. Sorry, give me a second. I like rashes and burns from this rubber, and then running against my leg, and then they told me, oh, it's supposed to have room. First of all, you can see how it indents my skin right there. We got the light over here. Look at that indent. I can't stick my finger in this at all. They go, oh, you're supposed to have a finger space in there, blah, 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 blah. And I keep telling them I don't have finger space, and I've already had them. This is the second one they put on me. The last one, it took off because my foot was turning purple. They put this one on here, and I told them I think it's the same length and size. It said it doesn't look like there's any difference in what they did. And they go, oh no, it's larger. It's
larger. You can see this right now. This is cruel and unusual punishment. And I'm requesting again that they remove this GPS monitor and put a new GPS monitor on me so that I have mobility with it, so I can move it around and twist it around and all that. Because I can't ankle monitor. And all it does is it burns me up, it rashes me up, painful. I bleed. You see the blood spots right there? I bleed out of it.
The ankle monitor issue was resolved a year later when Searles was appointed as current parole officer Raul. Raul checked on Searles' ankle monitor, and when he seen how tight it was, he removed it and replaced it with another ankle monitor. This photo is the damage done to Searles' ankle and foot because of the ankle monitor. When Searles was being processed for release, a hold was placed on him because he is a registered sex offender. He had to be evaluated by 2 psychiatrists to determine if he was a sexually violent predator or not. If deemed a sexually violent predator, he would not be paroled, and he would be confined to civil commitment. If he was deemed not to be a sexually violent predator, he would be paroled out. Searles was evaluated and deemed not to be a sexually violent predator. When Searles was facing trial, Dorkin attempted to have him tried as a gang member, so that if convicted, he would get hit with gang enhancements. The courts reviewed Searles' case and the information provided by law enforcement and denied Dorkin's request to have Searles tried as a gang member on the grounds that there was no evidence to support the claim Searles was gang affiliated, and the case was not a gang case. CDCR records even confirm Searles has no gang affiliation, as illustrated in this correspondence request. If an inmate is gang affiliated, they are not permitted to write another inmate in another prison.
A representative of Kern County has requested that we do not mention any other cases of wrongful convictions that has occurred in Kern County. So out of respect for those who have been wrongfully convicted by Kern County, here are the cases we could find online.
Like a bird on a tree, I'm just sitting here. I got time, it's clear to see. From up here, the world seems small. We can sit together. It's so beautiful, you and me. We meant to be in the great outdoors, forever free. Take a step back to see the truth around you. From a distance you can tell. You and me are meant to be outdoors, forever free. You and me, meant to be in the great outdoors, forever free.
Bakersfield, Kern County has historically, since I've worked here, had a history of, I've heard the term cowboy law enforcement for years. And we kind of like that.